last, I would say 15, 20 years, I have spent mostly in the music business with two different bands, touring around the world, and just really blessed to be able to do music for a living. So started with a group, started as a solo act for a few years, and then formed a band called Fort Pastor with one of my best friends in the world, JT Keel, who is a slide guitar, banjo, mandolin, you name it, he plays it. So
That was the gentleman in that video with you guys singing that song
Yes.
that your hit off or the
Yes.
single off your album. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
He's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, he's the bearded one. Yes. And so JT and I, we've been playing music together for 15 years or so. We had a band called Fort Pastor, which it's 2006, I think is when we started. Signed a record deal in the Christian market, and toured heavily sort of in the Christian market with everybody from Switchfoot, Jars of Clay, Third Day, Toby Mac, sort of that whole world, and decided we wanted to branch out a little bit, and so we did. One of our bandmates was Australian. He moved back to Australia, so Jeff and I sort of decided we were going to take a break for a little bit. We each released a solo project and then formed Big Kettle Drum in 2009 and really sort of hit the general market and toured really the last 10 years as Big Kettle Drum. And so that was fantastic. Again, very, very blessed to be able to sort of do that all over the planet for a very long time. But about 6 years ago, my oldest son had gotten sick. He had a rare form of cancer. And we spent 263 straight days at Florida Hospital for Children in Orlando with him battling. And so that sort of forced me off the road. And in the band at that point, it was just too hard to be on tour and be away when I knew I needed to be home. And so I started to transition off the road and actually started a church. I thought that was going to be my retirement plan, right? And so we had started the church just before my son got sick, and that was going to be my plan, is to transition off the road and just pastor the church. And what ended up happening was my son got sick. I'm right in the middle. The church is booming, and God and I are in fisticuffs, right? We're having some toe-to-toe battles on a daily basis because I'm just distraught over my son, and so I felt just uncomfortable standing up in front of people on a Sunday when I'm questioning everything. Well, when they super suppressed his immune system, he contracted a deadly fungus while he was in the hospital. And the way that you fight the fungus is you super boost the immune system. So he has two things that are killing him with opposite treatments. And so one afternoon we get called into the parents' lounge, and my wife and I are sitting there, and there's a line of doctors sitting in the lounge, and one of them stands up and she says, we're so sorry, but there's nothing else we can do. We don't think he's going to make it through the night, so you should probably say your goodbyes. And that is not the conversation we were expecting, and so we were shocked. We stood up, turned around, went back into the room, got his younger brother, sat on the edge of his bed, and tried to find the words to say goodbye. And you're a parent, but to sit on the edge of a bed and hear your child say, "I'm going to miss you, Daddy," is like it's soul crushing, right? And so we did what they told us to do, and the problem was I called my younger brother who lives up in New Hampshire. I said, "You're not going to have time to make it down here. You're going to need to say your goodbyes on the phone if this is what's happening." So he does. He's distraught, of course. What I did not know is that night he went onto YouTube and filmed himself sitting on his couch in his living room, holding up poster boards, sort of explaining what was going on. "My nephew's dying. This is what's happening. We're out of options. If you know anybody, we need your prayers. We need a miracle. If you have any ideas, please help us." He never said a word. He simply played the song "Fix You" by Coldplay and held up these poster boards.
Probably because he was unable to
right.
say the words.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so Theo makes it through the night. My son makes it through the night. We are just sitting there waiting, and my phone's ringing off the hook. I'm trying to ignore it. I'm trying to just be present and in the moment with my son, trying to spend every last second we can.
Yeah.
And as we are doing that, my phone is now hot from vibrating. So I finally pick up the phone after a couple hours. And what I didn't realize is that video that he uploaded to YouTube had gone viral and had been seen over 500,000 times. And so I'm getting calls from doctors from all over the world who say, I saw this video and I think I can help. And so we got a call from a expert at MD Anderson in Houston who said, I think I have an alternate treatment that might be helpful. Can I talk to the bone marrow doctor? And so we were like, sure. And then I got a call from Dr. Tim Johnson from Good Morning America who said, hey, I saw this video, and you tell your doctor anybody that he wants to speak to, give me a list and I'll make it happen in the next 24 hours. So we did. We made a list of a graft versus host specialist at Dana-Farber up in Boston and another doctor at Cornell University doing some cutting edge research. And the 4 doctors put their heads together and they came up with this crazy plan to save my son. And in 24 hours, we went from say your goodbyes to he's going to make it. I go back now, and the hardest part of the whole thing for me is if I would have done the work to define those core values, the conversation I had at the edge of that bed would have been completely different.
Yeah.
I would have never, ever said my goodbyes. Because for me, creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. I have 6. Those are the 6 I filter every decision in my life through. At the time, I had no idea what they were. So I made a bad decision. I made a bad decision that had a great outcome, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is I've spent 7 years going to bed every night wondering if my son is going to bed thinking I gave up on him, right? And that is a level of guilt and a level of just general awfulness that no one should go to bed thinking about.
Yeah.
So I've sort of devoted my life since that time to define what matters most to me, to define those non-negotiables, to stop winging it, to start living with deliberate intention. And so everything that's asked of me gets filtered through those 6 things. And even being here with you today, if it helps me achieve those things, then I'm all in. And if it goes against or violates any of those things that I'm telling you matters most to me, the answer is no. And it's really simple, and I don't feel bad about saying no, because it is literally violating one of the things that I say matter most to me. But what we find is that when I ask questions to thousands of people that I see on a regular basis doing these talks, and I say, show of hands, how many people here can tell me your 4 or 5 core values, where they came from, give me a couple of examples of each, and how you're being deliberate with your intention to live them out every day. And I see a smattering of 1 or 2 or 3 hands in the midst of thousands. We wonder why the country's in the state that it's in right now, and it's because we're not a values-based country anymore. We are an emotions-based country, and that is really, really dangerous when you forget about those things, because it's those core values that a lot of us share, and we find common ground, and we don't have to get our emotions so involved so that we are saying things we regret, and social media allows us to do it in a faceless way, and there's no courage needed to send a tweet to someone and say something awful. But when we start to turn that conversation back to our core values, for me, it comes down to it's values, purpose, mission, right? And that's the what, the why, and the how. And so many of us are focused on the why. We want to get to the why, but you can't get to the why until you define the what. If you choose your why before you define your why is going to be wrong every time. And so I try to get people to back up. Let's talk about these 4, 5, 6 things that are your non-negotiables, because when those are defined, the activation of your core values becomes your purpose, right? And then once you can do that, your mission is how you live that out every single day in your life, and that changes all the time. That changes on a daily basis, but your purpose and your core values never change.
That's right.
They're the stability. There's what you can sort of build your life on and know that it's rock solid.
Yeah.
And what it allows you to do, the thing that's been the life changer for me is I adopted something from an article that I read last year before Christmas. It was an article on Gary Vaynerchuk, who's Gary V.
Certainly.
So incredibly powerful, influential person out there, motivator, businessman, digital media, the whole thing. And there was an article written about him in the New York Times that said future Jets owner, blah 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 blah, right? And I thought it was very interesting that that's how they he could be a million things, but they chose future Jets owner. So I'm fascinated by that. So I'm reading the article in there, and the guy who's doing the interview is talking to Gary Vee's brother, and he says, "I got to tell you, it's a little bit weird that he talks like he's just going to own the Jets one day. It's not an if, it's a when, and he's got a plan, and it's going to be when he's 68 years old, and they're going to go to 8 Super Bowls, they're going to win 6, and he's going to die, and that's how it's going to be." And he's like, he's so certain. And his brother said, "Yeah, he's going to speak it into existence." And I took that one sentence, and I started to say, that's what's missing in my life. I know my values. I know all these things, but how can I start to speak things into existence? That's where the programming comes from. If I start my day going, hey, I know I'm going to be on this podcast today. I know that I have a chance to engage my 6 different things. I'm going to make sure that people hear them. I'm going to make sure that people feel them so that I know that I'm doing everything in my power to live out my purpose. And so for me, that's the change. And since I've started doing that, my speaking engagements have gone through the roof. My fees have gone through the roof. All of a sudden, everything that I had hoped for is now happening. And it's not because I'm being conceited or I am trying to, some mumbo jumbo motivation stuff. That's not it at all. It's I'm engaging my values at such a powerful level that other people feel it. And when you can do that and you start to align yourself with other people's core values, they just want to help. They just want to be there. They want to lift you up. It's why you guys exist as an organization here, right? It's all about transformation. And when people start to define those things, you can really help them. But if they don't, your ability to transform people's lives it's going to be a roller coaster because they have nothing to hold themselves accountable to until they decide that they're going to live with deliberate intention.